Welcome, greetings again, and welcome to another edition of Forever Young, a show that we believe age is just a number. And because of that, we bring you informational and inspirational information that helps you as you grow older in your seasoned years. Today's show will be hosted by myself, Dr. Sharon Mitchell, along with our fabulous Miss Jean Hendricks. And we have absent today our other co host, Mr. David Linton. So before we go further, I'd like for Jean to say hello and we will come back and talk about our special guest that we have for us today. Miss Jean, are you still with us?
Yes, I am, Dr. Mitchell. I'll always be here for you, and I'm so excited to be here today and to go into our questions with our guest. Back to you, Dr. Mitchell.
Thank you, Miss Jean. And we have another wonderful informational session for Forever Young today. We have some special ladies, so this will actually be a ladies edition today. We don't have any of our gentlemen with us today, but nevertheless, we'll have a great conversation. We have three ladies that will be joining us today. Their names are Miss Sabrina Stolze, Miss Cheryl Luke, and our very own Miss Betty Williams. And they are a part of something that we find very, very needed in our communities across the country. It's a program called Celebrate Recovery. And it is actually a Christ-centered 12-step recovery program for anyone struggling with hurt, pain, or addiction of any kind. And Celebrate Recovery is a safe place to find community and freedom from the issues that are controlling our life. And so we have members of this group who not only participate in Celebrate Recovery, but they also have their own stories as relates to their involvement and how they became involved. Our first guest, Ms. Sabrina Stolze, is the U.S. State represented trainer for Celebrate Recovery. She's been married for 34 years and has 2 children and 2 grandchildren. And of course, when you see her, you won't believe that she's actually a grandmother because she certainly is very, very youthful. But she's been in recovery for 14 years for codependency and food and body image issues at her local Celebrate Recovery chapter. She served as the team director for CR, as a training coach, and eventually a ministry leader at her local CR center. We also have with us Ms. Cheryl Luke, who is the founder of Mosaic Life Network. She's a speaker, a writer, a podcast host, and a life coach. She's committed to empowering the generations to live with intention and embrace Christ's unyielding love. As the director of Celebrate Recovery in cultural communities, Cheryl has the privilege of ensuring churches, along with people of color, that they know that Celebrate Recovery is a safe environment to work through the pain of their past and receive healing from life's hurts, hang-ups, habits, and addictions. And finally, but not the last of them, is Miss Betty Williams, who's a member of our church of House of Hope Atlanta. She's the coordinator for Celebrate Recovery for our church and has just done a dynamic job as a result of developing it in our church. We are about a 2-year-old ministry now, but Betty has been our unsung hero in her efforts. Betty is a grateful believer in Jesus Christ. She has worked on her issues as an adult child from a dysfunctional family, codependency, and overeating. She's been redeemed from a 40-year drug alcohol addiction. And Betty is an Atlanta, Georgia native. She is one of those Georgia peaches. And when you see her, you'll know why she's a Georgia peach. She's a daughter. She has a daughter. She has 2 grandsons. She's been a professional registered nurse for the last 46 years, and she received an advanced nurse practice certification as a registered certified nurse anesthesiologist. There's so much to Miss Betty in terms of her story. She's a major caregiver in our ministry. She's active in other ministries in the church, but her work with Celebrate Recovery is what we're going to talk to her about today. And so before we have our our guest come on, Miss Jean, who typically has some nugget of wisdom, she's going to come back to the show and share something with us, and then we will bring our guests out for you to meet each one of them. Miss Jean, you have something for us today?
Yes, I do, Dr. Mitchell, as always. And this one is entitled, very short and very sweet. It says recovery. Recovery, it will be challenging. It will also be worth it. You will relapse, and that's okay as long as you keep fighting. When you feel like quitting, think about why you started. Back to you, Dr. Mitchell.
Thank you, Miss Jean. And so, without further ado, we like to bring our guests to the platform so that you can see their beautiful faces. This guest of all beautiful ladies today. And we certainly would like to welcome them to the House of Hope Atlanta and to our Forever Young program. This is one of our ministries of House of Hope Atlanta. Our executive producer, Dr. E. Dewey Smith, and our producer, Benton Aladdin. This is one of many shows that we provide to our audience. We're so glad that you tuned in to Forever Young once again. So we like to certainly start with Miss Sabrina. Miss Sabrina, can you tell us a little bit about Celebrate Recovery? And we'll kind of go back and forth with a conversation in terms of your involvement. But we like to certainly have you tell us a little bit about Celebrate Recovery.
Okay. Like you said, it's a Christ-based 12-step program. It also has 8 principles that are based on the Beatitudes of Jesus Christ. It's been around since 1991. It started at Saddleback Church at that time. Pastor John Baker, our founder who passed this year, actually started it because he struggled with alcohol issues, and he just wanted a place in his local church where he could claim Jesus Christ as his higher power and get help for his issue. And it just started for his family and people in his local church, and it has just spread unbelievably over the last 30 years. It helps people with any kind of struggles, not just drug or alcohol addiction. A lot of people assume that that's the case because it's a recovery program, but it's for any hurt, any habit, any hang up, any struggle that you have in your life that affects your life negatively. It's an amazing program that I'm just so thankful for personally.
Wow, thank you, Sabrina. So you talked about it starting in Saddleback. Can you share a little bit about the founder as well, and then tell us what the mission and vision of Celebrate Recovery is?
So John Baker, like I said, was the founder along with his wife, Cheryl Baker. He was struggling with alcohol addiction and was at the time separated from his wife. His wife had started attending Saddleback with their children, and they reconciled. He started working a 12-step program, Alcoholics Anonymous, outside of Saddleback, and started getting sobriety, started working through the 12 steps, made amends, ended up getting back together with his wife. And they, like I said, they wanted to start something at their local church that can, number one, support his process of recovery, as well as help others in the church that were struggling with the same type of issues. And so he wrote Rick Warren a infamous 13-page single-space letter outlining a program that he had kind of gotten a vision for to help families, not just those struggling with issues, but the families of those that are as well. Today it is a family program. There is the adult part of the program, but there is also Celebration Place for children and the landing for teens. And so that vision has come to fruition over the years. And his wife ended up, of course, utilizing it as well, and his children, who are now very, very involved. In fact, when Pastor John passed away this year, his son Johnny and his wife Jenny actually became the global executive directors of Celebrate Recovery, and Johnny is the pastor of Celebrate Recovery.
Okay, thank you.
And the vision, as you talked about in the mission, is really just to bring healing and restoration to all people, because everyone struggles with some kind of hurt in their lives.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Freedom. It's at the core of who we are. The freedom to live without fear, to jog where we please, to wear a hoodie. The freedom to breathe. Before we celebrate the freedom most Americans have, we must fight for the freedom all Americans deserve. Because all lives can't matter until Black lives matter.
Well, look, you might not be popular, but my favorite character is Celestial because
One of the quotes that I wrote down in the book that kind of stood out to me was, "Love is the enemy of sound judgment."
She seemed like a very needy woman. And I can't even respect Andre, because how do you prey on your friend's wife while he's incarcerated? Like, I just can't get with that. And maybe I got too invested in the book,
I think you, Sabrina, has already answered the question. I was going to ask you about the vision to celebrate. What's the vision to celebrate recovery? I think you've already covered that.
Yeah, to bring healing and restoration, like I said, we want more people to know about Celebrate Recovery. We are a ministry that is in 35,000 churches around the world and have helped 7 million people go through step studies. And yet there are so many that don't know what Celebrate Recovery is or has never heard about it. And so even though we are a worldwide ministry, we want it to just be known by anyone and everyone that you can get healing through Jesus Christ's power in this ministry, giving you the tools.
Thank you.
I think, Cheryl, you talked about the Christ-centered nature of it. Can you expound a little bit on that? Because we've heard of other recovery programs, particularly when you talk about 12 steps. How does this program differ from some of the other, and the one that comes to mind for me would be Alcohol Anonymous, for example, where we hear the 12-step programs with that. So how do you differ from Celebrate Recovery regarding the Christ-centered approach to the 12-step model?
Was that for me?
Yeah, I guess either of you guys can answer it, either Cheryl or Sabrina, whichever.
Cheryl, you go ahead.
Okay, so the difference with Celebrate Recovery is Jesus is our higher power. In other recovery programs that tend to be more secular or traditional, the higher power can be anything that the individual decides needs to be their higher power. But with Celebrate Recovery, we acknowledge Jesus Christ as our higher power. We acknowledge him as our savior. We understand that he died on the cross for our sins, and our goal is to ensure people are saved and healed.
Man, that's fabulous. That's one of the things that when I first became exposed to it, that really hit home for me, is that that's the centered focus.
Right.
And we know that we can do all things through Christ who strengthens us. And so certainly
Amen.
having that as a platform and a background and a program that builds from that, it certainly is something that makes it different from your typical programs where you're struggling and you don't use Christ as, or as you're referring to, a higher power as your strength. You have some other strength that you can lean on. So I wanted to kind of, for our audience sake, to understand this is what makes Celebrate Recovery very, very different from many other recovery type programs and with steps, et cetera, is that we know who the focus of this program is, and we see the success. And you talked about, what, 35,000 locations? Is that what I heard, Sabrina?
Yes.
Are they all churches, or are they in other areas? Is it just for churches themselves?
Well, generally speaking, the program is meant to be a ministry of a local church. But there are, like, for example, there are some Salvation Army organizations that have utilized it. So there are other organizations that do use it, but as generally speaking, it is an extension of the church. It's a ministry of a local church that has the overseeing of the local church leadership and the senior pastors.
Okay. So leading to that question, I'm sorry, Ms. Jean, I had a thought with Cheryl when she started talking about the local church. So Cheryl, you are the person that's responsible for the cultural component. Can you talk a little bit about that for us?
I would love to. My goal and my responsibility within Celebrate Recovery is to ensure that people of color are aware that Celebrate Recovery exists. If you take a look at Celebrate Recovery today, it is and has been a fairly white organization, and that has never been the heart of our founders, nor Johnny and Jenny Baker, who are our executive directors today. And so they brought me on to make sure that churches of color, that people of color, and not just Black people, but Latino, Latina, the AAPI community, and other Indigenous people know that this ministry is something that can absolutely change their lives. And I'm thrilled to be a part of this ministry. It has changed my life significantly.
Wow.
Wow. Okay, Miss Jean, go ahead.
Yes, I was going to ask Cheryl, why is an organization like Celebrate Recovery so important to you?
Mhm. That's a great question, and I'm glad you asked, because I have been a part of the local church for over 50 years. And I've been through a lot of programs. I've been through, their church office offers Bible study. They offer, we have women's ministry, we have men's ministry, we have ministries for our children, and some churches offer some type of a deliverance sometimes, but when I became a part of Celebrate Recovery, I realized that I had never really looked at some of the issues in my life that helped, in some ways, shaped who I became, that is separate from who Christ called me to be. And so I happened upon Celebrate Recovery because I work at a church. The person who led Celebrate Recovery previous to me stepped out, and my pastor asked me to step in. And I came upon a ministry that I thought I was going to walk in and help a bunch of people find freedom. And that has happened. But I have found a freedom I've never known dealing with food issues, which is the thing that I've dealt with my entire life, and dealing with control issues. When I think about Celebrate Recovery, initially I thought, oh, those poor drug addicted people, or those poor alcohol addicted people. No, it is people who are addicted to control. There are people who have been hammered by anger. There are people here who have had things happen to them in their lives, and as a result, they react to individuals in different ways, or they have taken on habits that are not a part of who God called them to be. And walking through these steps, you find freedom or healing, and you do it in a community, and it's something that happens worldwide. It's not just something that happens in a church down the street that you have to go to. It can happen in our churches, and it's important to me. I think particularly in this season where racial tension has been magnified, and there are so many people of color who have gone through trauma and haven't had a place to, outside of counseling, haven't had a place to unpack the trauma in a safe environment and find freedom. And so it is absolutely important to me. I would say this is some of my life's most important work, to ensure that people of color know that there is a place and a space and an environment that is safe for them to talk about their stuff. That's why it's important to me.
Wow. That was so good, Cheryl.
That was.
Thank you. That was a lot of words.
Yes. People can come to this organization with various types of problems or hang-ups, not only with drugs or smoking or anything like that. I might need you as far as being overweight. I'll be contacting you.
Yes. And may I also say that, and I don't remember if Sabrina mentioned this, but 1 out of 3 people that attend Celebrate Recovery don't. 1 out of 3 people have a drug or alcohol addiction. Those other 2 people, it's anger, it's sexual addiction, it's pornography, it's food addiction. It could be a myriad of other issues.
Yes.
Wow.
That is good.
Anything that you can think of.
Great.
Wow. And I think that's the key to talking about this program, is that when we hear addiction, we automatically assume it's drugs, alcohol, gambling, smoking, but there are so many other addictive behaviors that we have.
My goodness.
Yeah. And so this is something, can you talk a little bit, Sabrina, I want to ask you, how do you create this safe environment you're talking about? How do I know that when I come in, all the stuff I say is not going to be posted in the church bulletin by the time I come out of the room? How do
Yeah.
you ensure a safe environment in that regard?
Well, and that's one of the things that I absolutely love about Celebrate Recovery and appreciate so much, because each one of us that are in any type of leadership in Celebrate Recovery came in, you know, Cheryl talked about coming in to help what we refer to as those people. I want to help those people that are hurting. And we don't understand, you know, a lot of people don't understand coming in that I am one of those people. We also started it at my church, and, you know, I got involved because I was an administrative assistant at the church, but immediately knew that I wanted it for me, for my own, because I grew up in an alcoholic home. I went into a marriage where both of us had alcoholic fathers and grew up in those environments. And so we both had issues that we carried into the marriage. We didn't drink, so we thought we were good. We didn't have any issues because we didn't do that. But he had anger and control. I had codependency and food and body image issues, and just so many other things that we brought into the marriage, that we spent 20 years just really damaging each other and causing more trauma to each other and more hurt. And so when it was offered, I was just so excited about going, but there were things that I had never shared with anyone, things that had never crossed my lips and that I didn't think ever would, truly. And so that was one of the things that scared me about it. But from the very first meeting, you're encouraged we go to the large group meeting, and then there's a newcomers 101 group where you go and you kind of learn all of the things about Celebrate Recovery, how it is different than other recovery programs, what makes it unique, what are the different elements, what group are you going to go into for Open Share, which are the small groups where we share after the large group time. And one of the key features that keeps this program safe are the 5 group guidelines. This is part of Celebrate Recovery, and they're read at every single Open Share group, at every step-study group, no matter how long you've been going, no matter how long your group has been going. These 5 guidelines are read at every single time, and they're enforced by the leaders of the programs. And so it includes things like not cross-talking, not fixing people, anonymity and confidentiality kind of being number one. And that especially for that particular guideline, that there's not a lot of grace offered. If you are gossiping about what's being shared, or you are sharing what's being shared in the group, that you will be given a warning, but then asked to leave the group if you do not follow those guidelines. And so many, these guidelines encompass all of the things that make it safe, because it's not just in those Open Share groups. You know, they are enforced and taught and just a part of our DNA as a ministry, and that's what keeps it safe. And people are people, human are human, humans are human, and we it's a learning curve and a learning process, but we learn how to keep each other safe in these programs, and it's one of the things that I just cherish about it. And it's the only reason that I've had any healing in my own life, because when I started, the things that I had never shared before, that started with an accountability partner in my first step study, but I didn't share about it in group. Then from there, I shared it in my next step study, I shared it in my group, and eventually in my testimony that I gave at our large group, and then eventually at conferences. And so eventually I could share those things, and they lost power, and the shame was left behind.
That is amazing. Yes.
Wonderful.
We're back on our Thanksgiving installation.
Meet the Scam. a simple procedure whose mission is to detect lung cancer early.
I'm here to save you.
But I feel fine.
That's great, but you may still be at high risk for lung cancer.
Oh man, that's a new fence.
If you smoke, early detection could save your life. Learn more at savedbythescan.org.
Why do you think these men don't want to get married?
It really depends on an individual's why for getting married. A lot of the things that make a man good are kind of intangible. And his credit score shouldn't be the metric for what makes him good.
So we have a few minutes left, and I don't want to run out of time. We always seem like we have a lot of time, but when we get in the middle talking, we run out of time. And so we don't want to, so we don't want to miss our local person, Miss Betty Williams, who's one of our ministers in training at church. And she brought Celebrate Recovery to the House of Hope Atlanta. So Betty, we want to give you a few minutes before we have to wrap up to tell us a little bit about your involvement and why was it important for you to bring it to the House of Hope Atlanta?
Well, when I was out there in the streets, I stumbled upon a Celebrate Recovery group. I was told about a group of people that was meeting that everybody was just so happy about and felt like they was really gaining some momentum in their recovery. They're able to stay clean. So I went to the meeting, and lo and behold, when I got to the meeting, they were talking about God and they had the Bible. So when I got clean and sober, I immediately start researching because they planted the seed of God in my life. Because I had not been to church in 40 years. I knew nothing about church. I knew nothing about God. Didn't want to know about him. So that opportunity to go that one night planted the seed for me to really want to find out more about Celebrate Recovery. So when I got clean and sober, like I said, I researched Celebrate Recovery. I started attending meetings and I realized, oh, wow, I like this concept of God. Because I realized God is what I had been missing all my life. I was missing the reason I was in that wilderness for 40 years because I didn't have a relationship with God. Once I connected with God, my life turned around. So
my God,
I thought Celebrate Recovery could really help other people because if he saved a wretch like me, I know he can save.
Oh my God.
Celebrate Recovery is a discipleship. I want to use it to go back and help people that's still out there that don't know God, afraid of God for whatever reason, can't trust God, and let them know that he's a forgiving God, a loving God. He loves you no matter who you are.
Come on, Miss Betty.
The Bible. He don't use nobody in the Bible that didn't have a negative so-called past.
Come on.
So,
testify now.
Don't get me talking about
now, Miss Betty, you don't took us all the way to church now, I tell you.
I'm not ready to get up and shout.
Because I'm reconnected with my family. I have a job. I have all those things the devil tried to take, and he was trying to take my life. Because when I found God, I was ready to commit suicide. I was one of those people walking down the street, felt like I was dead, just simply buried. So God turned me around, set my feet on solid ground. And like I said, if he could do that for me, I just think everybody should at least have the opportunity to know who God is. And so the 12 steps, the Bible verses, every step and every principle is backed up with a Bible verse from the Beatitudes in Matthew 5. It has just been phenomenal in my life. Ask my daughter. I mean, people in my family, in my life have noticed the changes along with my activities at church. So.
Amen. Thank you, Miss Betty. I think what you all need to add to Celebrate Recovery is not just recovery. You need to say restoration. I mean, to hear this testimony of how it restored her back to what God planned for her all along. And you can't do that with just repeating verses. This was a transformation. And so here's
Amen.
someone that's a poster child of how this program has transformed her life, all aspects of her life, not just from
Yeah.
overcoming her own addictions, but
Mhm.
reconnecting her with family, reconnecting relationships, changing the way that she did things. I mean, we've heard it all. This is testimony time of how
Yes.
someone can talk about the goodness of God and having
Amen.
something like this that changed her life.
Mhm.
I mean, you don't get a better poster child, if you will, in terms of
Mm-mm.
not just for the personal growth, but the fact that not only she's talking about discipleship, because he did it for her. Now she's saying, I want to go back and tell everybody else so that he can do it for them.
Mhm.
Right.
And
Right.
so,
Exactly.
One of
that
one of
was
the
powerful.
one of the
Yes,
things
Sabrina.
that Rick Warren says all the time is that Celebrate Recovery is a disciple making factory, and that because this program, all it is sanctification. It's just a discipleship program, but
Yes.
it's just very focused and gives you specific tools for issues that you have. But that is what Betty shared. That is the power of this ministry. That is
Amen.
everything.
Yes.
That is what it is all about for every one of us that have been a part of it, is that we have been able to see true transformation,
Amen.
real transformation, whether we've been Christians for a short period of time or our whole lives.
Mhm. Wow. And that's what you want. Now it's no longer a program. It's something that's come to life. And it lives on because it's living on in the people whose lives it's transformed. So it doesn't just, you don't just connect and now it's over. It continues. And what a great disciple you all have reflected in terms of being disciples of this program. For those of you who have tuned in, I got to give a commercial break. We're so full. Me and Miss Hendricks are going on and have church
Yeah.
now. We don't need anything else. We can benedict. But for those,
Pay your tithe.
yes. But I tell you, it moved us all. If you felt that, you're watching Forever Young, and this is a program for those who are over the age of 50. We say that age is nothing but a number, but you see that even sharing this platform, you can receive the things that God has for you. And we see women who are sitting here on this platform today that are talking about something, Celebrate Recovery, that has not just been a so-called program, but it has been something that has transformed their lives. And so their information is underneath their names. You can see their contact information. You certainly can reach out to them. And as usual, we always run out of time. We have a few more minutes, and I like to at least do a close for each of you ladies. And if you would, I know we had you for one booking. We'd like to know if you can come back and we can pick up and talk a little bit. You talked about the Beatitudes and some of the other components of the program. If you all agree to come back with us, we'll do another part, and some people can catch us for the second part. But as we close this segment, I'd like for you all to at least leave us with something that you'd like to say. We'll start with you, Sabrina, and then we'll follow with Ms. Cheryl, and then, of course, Ms. Betty.
So my biggest thing always is that Celebrate Recovery is for everyone. I just can't say that enough, because that misconception just it's so hard to overcome that it's just for drug and alcohol addiction, but it is for everyone. Sin became a part of our life from the beginning, right? And we're all affected by sin, whether that sin is perpetrated against us or we perpetrated that sin against others. That's what creates the hurts that we come into this ministry for, that turn into hangups that we have that we can't seem to overcome, and then turns into habits that end up continue to hurt us in our lives. And so this ministry is for every single person on the planet. It can help you no matter where you're at or what your struggles are.
Thank you, Ms. Sabrina. Ms. Cheryl?
Yes, and to tag on to what you said so beautifully, Sabrina, is it's really easy for us to say that this is for them, this is for those people. And I really think that most of us are those people. And if you've been struggling with anything, lying, if you've been struggling with addiction, pornography, with codependency, I just want to challenge you to fight for yourself. I want to challenge you to do the work for yourself, because you will become a greater representation of yourself by doing the hard work of recovery. And, sometimes we get so bound and we become familiar with the ways that we live and that are not like God, those ways become familiar. But once we release those habits, once we release those idiosyncrasies that don't look like Christ, we become more familiar with ourselves and we become more familiar with the God that created you. So please do the work for yourself and know that God has freedom and that it's got your name on it.
Amazing. Thank you, Ms. Cheryl. And so, Ms. Betty, for the last few minutes, if you could share your closing message for us.
And I can't say any more than what they've already said. They pretty much said it all. But one thing I'd like to say is that God is here for everybody, no matter who you are, what you've been, what you've done. He's a loving, kind, forgiving God. And if you think that you're not worthy, please know that you are. That Celebrate Recovery is a place where you can find peace, safety, confidentiality, to explore those issues and to find out just how much God really loves you and how much people really care for you. And we are your forever family.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, ladies. This has been a remarkable ladies edition of Forever Young. And we'd like to thank our guests who participated with us today from Celebrate Recovery. And if you've got any hurts, hang-ups, this is our habits. This is a program that you can tap into. Celebrate Recovery is one of our ministries at the church, at the House of Hope Atlanta. You can find out more about our ministry on our website, or you can reach out to Miss Betty, whose information is on the screen. And with that said, we're going to close out this segment of Forever Young. We'd like to thank you for participating. Thank you, Miss Jean, co-hosting with me today. And again, to Miss Cheryl, Miss Sabrina, and Miss Betty, we'd like to thank you. And to our guests, until next time, this is Forever Young, where age ain't nothing but a number. See you next time.
What's up, y'all? It's your boy Jermaine Dolly, Mr. Hello Dolly himself, and guess what? You're tuned in to Tea and Worship with my homies, Mignon and Corey. Keep it out, y'all.
Hey, y'all, it's Candy West, and you're watching Tea and Worship with Mignon and Corey.
It's your boy James Fortune, and you are watching my favorite news show, Tea and Worship, with my sis Mignon and Corey.
I'm Jim Forstner, the CEO of Emory Hillendale, Emory Decatur, and Emory Long-Term Acute Care Hospitals. I want to thank House of Hope and Pastor Sharice Cross for allowing us to bring this important health information to you through the Hope TV platform. As we continue to be challenged by COVID-19, it is incredibly comforting to know that ministries like House of Hope are supporting our community. I encourage you to keep your guard up by wearing masks, practicing hand hygiene, and avoiding large gatherings until such time as you and those around you are able to receive the vaccine. To learn more about the vaccine, I invite you to visit our website at www.emoryhealthcare.org/COVID-vaccines-FAQ.html. You can also find that right off our emoryhealthcare.org homepage. On behalf of our physicians and all of our staff, I want to thank you for doing your part to stop the spread of COVID-19.
Hello, welcome to Hope TV. I'm Kawanda Green, and this is Surviving and Thriving in a Pandemic. Thank you so much for joining us. Actually, welcome back. Last week, we talked to Dr. Andrea Dabney, an OBGYN at Emory Healthcare. We talked to her about women's health. And this week, we're going to talk about women's health. We talked about pap smears and women's cycles last week, and we really got into it. So I recommend you go back and watch part 1. Part 2, today we're going to talk about fibroids and menopause and among other things, but we're going to dive into it. So we're going to get right into it because Dr. Dabney has so much great information for us. Dr. Dabney, welcome to the show. Welcome back to the show, actually.
Thank you. Thank you for having me back. It's good to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much. Just like I said, last week we talked about the pap smear and our cycles, and we ended off talking about the heavy bleeding. And what I've heard when they bleed a lot, that fibroids might be an issue. Can we talk about that?
Absolutely. That's a great question. Fibroids happen to be one of the most common uterine masses. The uterus is the womb, or what holds a baby when you're pregnant. The fibroids are smooth muscle tissue growths. Now, what that means is the type of tissue that it is growing in that organ in the uterus is smooth muscle. Now, because of the character of it, we can see this tissue on imaging, such as an ultrasound. When we see these, it helps us measure them, and it helps us to learn more about ways to help young women, because some young women, unfortunately, make very large fibroids. Those fibroids can be difficult in that they can cause heavy bleeding, and for some women, infertility. And so it's really important because we can get imaging such as our ultrasound, our MRI or magnetic resonance imaging to look more at these lesions so that we can offer therapy or treatment. Now, for some women, they don't need treatment. I'm sorry, were you about to say something?
That's what I was going to ask you about treatments. But you continue and we'll get back to that.
Sure. And so when they come to us with a complaint of the heavy bleeding or abnormal bleeding or changes in their cycle. My cycle was every month, but now I'm noticing it's twice in a month, or I'm noticing it's longer than it used to be. what we do is imaging, and ultrasound is our best friend. It's one that we use to help look at the different textures and shadings of the image and the qualities in that image to tell us more about what's going on. Now, with fibroids, they have submucosal, subserosal, and intramural. That's where they are located on the uterus or inside the uterus. Depending on where they're located helps us determine how we can treat a patient. Some women we offer medications to, and usually we try to use that as our guideline, knee jerk automatically, because it's the least invasive thing for a patient. But there's a lot of caveats to that. If they are perimenopausal, if they are on the verge of 48 to 50 years old, they may say, look, I've had my children. I just want this bleeding to stop. And we understand that. So we move to more what we call definitive treatments. And usually that is a hysterectomy or removal of that uterus. Now, if the fibroids are in a young reproductive age woman that is interested in childbearing, that may or may not have started having children yet, we offer medications, but those medications put you into fake menopause. So it shuts the hormones down to stop the growth of the fibroid. So you can't get pregnant when you're in fake menopause. So that's not the right choice. So we have other things that we do, such as a myomectomy or removal of 1 or 2 fibroids. Sometimes it's a lot more than that. Imaging is great, but it's still technology that's going to continue to improve. And so sometimes the images don't show us all the fibroids that are actually there. And when we take you to surgery, it ends up being a lot more than what we had planned for initially. So a myomectomy is what we call uterine sparing, meaning the job is to keep that uterus because, one, the patient wants her uterus. 2, the patient is interested in childbearing. And so we have to go through a lot of discussion around the needs of the patient and helping them to decrease sometimes just the bulk or the size of their uterus because they're in so much pain or pressure, or the bleeding is so bad that we're using these measures to try to help with that.
Dr. Dabney, why are fibroids so high in African American women?
I will win the Nobel Peace Prize if I figure that one out. We are working so hard, but study-wise, we need more money funding to do more research. There are a lot of women's issues that don't get the deserved funding to learn more so that we can do better. But it's slowly getting better. We're making ground in it. I so wish I knew the magic bullet to fibroids because you are so right. It is what a large majority of my young women that have them are African American. and they can be so difficult. So we've got to figure that one out. We just don't know the answer yet.
One of my girlfriends, she has them, and her bleeding is just, when she was telling me about it, it was just unreal. Like, I couldn't imagine it. But what she told me, once she started her cycle and she went on this 7-day water fast, and her bleeding was the lightest it's ever been in her entire life. She didn't have any pain, and her bleeding, it was incredibly light. So I wonder if what we're eating contributes to fibroids. Have you learned anything?
The thing is, anecdotally, I have had many of my young women tell me when they change their diet, their bleeding improves significantly. Some of them have become vegan or vegetarian, and the changes in the diet they attribute it to. I can never say that that is not the case, because a healthier diet overall is going to make a healthier person. Now, the key is to figure out the link between what in the diet is actually the culprit. I would love to know which food, which protein, which fast food restaurant, yes, which sugar, is doing this, because there is something there. When women change their diets, I do see improvements in bleeding. I do see decreases in the size of their fibroids as we follow them over time. For some young women, they'll tell me, Dr. Dabney, I don't want those hormones. I don't want to use any of those old hormones and add nothing extra to my body. And I understand that. But you're right. There is something to the diet, and technology is going to get there, but we've got to get that funding. So that's going to be key.
It would be so awesome if, like, maybe some of your patients or, a group of women would just wean out a few things at a time so they can start eliminating, and they can get more information and they can share it with other women. That could benefit a lot of women. I think that would be a great idea.
I think that's a great idea. What happens usually is human nature. The things we cut out are those things that we enjoyed for different reasons, comfort foods, things that we're drawn to because they can become easily addictive, like the fried foods. And so it's hard to do something like that and sustain it.
We were talking about our last segment, we were talking about menopause. You mentioned perimenopause. I think there was 3 that you mentioned. Where were the other 2? Perimenopause, postmenopause, and I guess
and then the reproductive age. So that's our premenopausal women.
Okay. So what do they experience when they're going through premenopausal stage?
So premenopause is our young women that still are desirous of pregnancy, are usually having regular cycles. Perimenopause may be what we were just ending on. Maybe that was it, Kawanda. Perimenopause is our bodies are starting to transition into the change. So for some women, and it's hormonal, again, just like when we begin menarche, our first cycle, the hormones have changed. Well, now we have exhausted a lot of the eggs we talked about that were in the ovaries. And so we're not getting the signals that we need to continue to have these cycles anymore. So as we lose the signals to our brain, it goes to our uterus and we start having longer cycles. So you can have a 14-day cycle and then skip a month. You can have a 3-week cycle and then skip a month. Oh, it can be really tough. Some women stop bleeding and never bleed again. Some women have these heavier, longer cycles until 1 month they just don't bleed. They just drop a cycle. And then the cycle starts again. 1 month it'll be 7 days. The next month it'll be 14 days. The next month it'll be 21 days. And then the next month they'll drop a cycle. And they'll do that too. As their bodies are changing, they're losing the hormonal signal to have a cycle. And so the body doesn't know what to do with it. And it tries to figure out where to bleed, when to bleed. And so it can bleed all the time. And then all of a sudden there's no more lining left to bleed. And it's very thin and you just don't bleed. So you drop a cycle. And so perimenopause is this really crazy time where the cycles can be ridiculous, up and down, up and down. And some women don't tolerate that well. Most women wouldn't tolerate bleeding and bleeding and bleeding for weeks. I mean, that's just crazy. The ones that go through it, what I call gracefully, will slowly decrease their cycles until they go to no cycle. They'll skip one. Then all of a sudden, they'll skip 2 to 3 months. They may have another cycle, then they skip 4 to 6 months. Then all of a sudden, they don't have a cycle and they don't remember when they had the last one.
That's what happened to me.
Love it. Love it. And so that's really my graceful patient. And those wonderful patients come in and they'll say, you know what? I haven't had a cycle. I haven't had a cycle and it's been a year. And then we start talking about how do you feel since you don't have those cycles? The hormonal changes, the drop in your hormone levels can make you feel horrible for some women. Some women have what we call flushing. Just all of a sudden, they'll feel heat and they'll feel just like they've got to rip their clothes off.
Hot flash. You called it flushing. What is that? Why is that called flushing?
That's a medical term that we use, but it is the hot flash.
Okay.
And
call them warm moments. Call them warm moments.
Some women will have decreased libido. Their sex drive just drops. Women don't make but a small amount of testosterone anyway. So changes in that level really can affect them tremendously. They will lose the desire to have intercourse, the desire to snuggle up with their significant other, and it's simply because those hormones have changed. Some women, oh, I'm sorry, were you about to say something?
I was saying, oh, wow, because when you said that, I'm picturing couples, married couples, and, you know, a woman going through the change, you know, and also when you said, you know, it's changing, I just realized growing up, I'll always hear people say, she's going through the change. And you just made it make sense. Now I understand what they were talking about. But I was just thinking about married couples. You know, if a wife is experiencing that, like it's not really, you know, something she can help. You know what I mean? Like the husband might think, you know, she's just pushing away, but it's her body. So what does she need to do? Because that's, I don't know, that's kind of scary.
Well, it is. And the thing to remember is men don't know what you're going through, and they don't have those changes. So it may be hard to talk about. It may be difficult to discuss with your husband, but because they don't understand that hormonal change. But you think about men that go through the life change where they buy the big race sports car, or now all of a sudden they're looking for a younger woman, or things like that. That's the first things that came to my mind. I'm sorry, but
No, you're right.
they don't see it the same. What we have to do is I have an open and honest discussion with the patient about what we can offer. And usually it means adding hormones back into their body so that they can gradually transition through the change. The hormones that your body made are dropping sharply in the first couple of years of menopause. So you experience other things like vaginal dryness. We talked about decreased libido. You also experience mood swings, and it can be very hard. You may not even realize you're going through it, but your family does. And so you're just not as, your hormones aren't stable. They're going up and down, up and down. And so your mood is doing the same thing. And that can be hard on you. Sometimes women can use natural remedies, and they will try some of the over-the-counter medications first. The thing is, you always want to discuss even these over-the-counter medications with your physician, because the hormones that they will change may not be all of the hormones you need to protect your lining. And if you don't, you can develop a cancer in the uterus from too much exogenous or an outside source of estrogen. We have in over-the-counter medications, phytoestrogens or plant-based estrogens. Now, it's over-the-counter, so a lot of women think it's okay. Those are still estrogen. So your body is making and using it the same. You do need to protect that lining with progesterone. So you have to balance it so that it doesn't run away into something that could lead to cancer. And that's really important.
Okay, I have a couple of questions. One, how can the men in our lives be more supportive? Like when women are experiencing, the change or those changes, how can they be more supportive? And also, after you answer that, what can women do about the dryness? Is there anything they can do naturally, about the dryness? We can talk about it. We can get with the men first, and then we'll talk about the dryness. Because I'm sure they want to know about it.
Great questions. Now, with men, the biggest thing they have to understand is we don't always recognize everything for what it is. We may not know that we're going through mood shifts. Being open and honest, just like when we have our spiritual retreats and we sit down together and we talk to each other and we are open about how we feel and what things drive or negate me being more cozy with you. For instance, women are so stressed by all the different things we get pulled from that at the end of the day, you want to sit down, flop down, and just take a breath. Because you already know there are going to be a million things just running through your head, even when you sit down to take that break. The mood swings come from stressors as well. And if men can be more supportive, more, honey, I understand, is there anything I can do? Can I rub your feet? Oh, that I wish I could write a prescription for massage, sitting down and just talking. It's so important because we don't get to do that enough. And although men don't want to share so much, even if you give us just a few minutes, it really helps to decompress. And part of the mood swings are everything we're doing on top of our hormones changing and changing and changing. And so the touch, when your significant other is touching your feet, is rubbing your shoulders, when you're just sitting together, touch is so integral in soothing and in
The intimacy.
oh, I'm sorry.
The intimacy.
Exactly.
All the things that you're naming, the intimacy. And it takes me back to what I said at the beginning of the other show, that the women are doing so much for so many people. They're neglecting themselves and no one is taking care of them. So it goes to everything that you're saying. They need that attention. And maybe if they got more of that attention, all of this stuff that you're naming, maybe they'll, be in better moods. And maybe they'll be in the mood. But continue. I'm so sorry to interrupt you. Continue.
Oh, no. This is wonderful. I feel like women in general do not, like we discussed at the last episode, do not get or make that opportunity to do for themselves. So having your spa day or your spa time once a week is important. You've got to nurture yourself because it starts with self-love. It's a process. And once you start doing it, and it's just like exercise, you feel better and you want to do more of the things that make you feel better. You can incorporate your significant other in these things too, and enjoy them together.
So what can they do about dryness?
Now, dryness is again lack of those hormones on that tissue. So non-hormonal options are things like there are medications that you can buy online. One in particular that I particularly like is Reverie. That particular medication is hyaluronic acid. Now that is also in skin moisturizers. It helps to plump the tissue. It helps to soothe that tissue. And so over time, that actual acid actually helps build that tissue up. So that's a wonderful medication. I tell my women often olive oil, extra virgin olive oil is okay. It's got great slip. It's usually in our cabinets. It is that's the right oil. Coconut oil, the extra virgin coconut oil. The one thing I have never been able to find is, would this affect condoms? One young patient asked me, how would this affect the condoms? And I don't have studies that tell me about the integrity of the condom with these particular oils. Now, there are also lubricants that are over the counter. The name of that big one just slipped my mind, but they have, that's it. So now they have gotten into oils, and they have really good slip and feel really good to the tissue, but you have to use them each time. Those are wonderful to try. And you can be creative when you're using them. You don't have to say, hold on, baby, wait. But, be creative with them. And then you have to, your partner has to know too that as you age, it takes time for that intimacy to build as you're moving to intercourse, and so that it's not painful because the tissue is drier. And so hormonally, we offer estrogen creams, estrogen tablets. There's even progesterone creams that you can put in the area. Those are not what we call systemic hormones. They act locally, directly on that tissue. So you don't get a lot of the systemic effect. You get almost none. And in doing so, you decrease that risk that women are worried about with breast cancers and cancers in general from added hormones in their systems.
And I've also heard mineral oil.
Yes.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I heard that mineral oil. I heard that it works and it lasts a long time.
Yes, as you say that, the one thing you have patients have to remember is if they use any of these oils, they don't need to use that every day. That oil
Right.
stays around and it will not easily go away. So they're good.
Well, that's good. We like to look for, we like the medicines, but we like to look for some natural ways as well. But I like what you said about the oils. That is Dr. Dabney, you have given us so much great information. We have got to have you back. My goodness. Do you have any encouraging words for our superheroes, the women of the world?
I call all my women Wonder Woman. And that's what I
Yes.
pretend I'm going to dress up as every Halloween. And I look at that outfit and know I can't get in it. So they are Wonder Women. Just keep doing what you're doing, but make sure you take time for you. I have had such a ball talking to you today. This is wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. Thank you again for being with us. And thank you for joining us again. Remember, a mother is one who does the work of many for free all day, every day. And we must take care of ourselves and look out for our mothers, our sisters, our aunts, our great aunts, because there are people who are doing that and, they're neglecting their own health. We can step in and make sure they're taking care of themselves. So be that person to step in and take care of your mom, your aunt, your sister, your cousin, your friend. And also, mothers, women, we love you. We appreciate you. We need you. Always remember, if you have health, you have hope. And if you have hope, you have everything. Don't lose hope. See you next time.